AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or are in the process of overcoming some life obstacle, some life challenge, some life topic. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. We, the Cooper Culture, are sponsoring this podcast series. We're featuring today Bill Koroncai, who is recovering from drug abuse. You will learn from his very confident statement that he came from a loving family and was, by a lot of appearances, well-liked. But one of the things that you'll learn from Bill's testimony is that there were some overpowering forces in his life that caused him to go into drugs. And I'm very interested in your take, what your thoughts are about people such as Bill, who on the outward appearance are confident, but yet inwardly they express that they have some lack of security, lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, and so forth. Marty, what are some of your takes?
Ron, I really enjoyed the attention to detail that Bill told his story from the time he was in grade school and then into drugs and through the drug journey that he had, and then the recovery process, and to his passion that he has today to help others that are going through this. It was great.
It's a very intriguing story. You will learn that Bill right now is very confident of himself. He's very confident that anyone can overcome the drug addiction, and you will learn from Bill's confidence in his voice, and I can only project what Bill used to be before he developed this level of self-confidence. Let's listen together. I'm very interested in your take and what you think are some ways that we can help those who may not yet be encountering the drug addiction, but have the propensity to do so. Bill, thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series. Bill, based on what I know of you, I think you have a lot to offer our listeners. And Bill, maybe just start, if you would, with just a very brief background of where you have been, what you're doing, and then we'll get just a little bit deeper into your past.
Sure, no problem, Ron, and thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Quick background at a high level on me. I am a 32-year-old, I would say middle-class, everyday guy. I'm the oldest of 3 children in my family. I come from a family of 2 loving parents and, again, a younger brother and sister. And, nothing extraordinary one way or another about my upbringing, but, myself and my younger brother actually found ourselves in the grip of addiction, several years back. And now both of us are, living happy and healthy, productive lives in recovery. So anything I can share from my experience to your listeners that might be of value to them, I'm happy to do so today.
Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate that. You came from a loving family. Can you go into just a little bit more explanation, Bill? A loving family, but you and your brother, maybe help us connect the dots. What was the reason, if you can determine that, the reason you became drug addicted?
Sure. So when I say I come from a loving family, I had two parents who, we were a middle-class family, so not rich by any stretch, but certainly not poor, and certainly not poor from a love in the household perspective. And, really if I had to kind of pinpoint one thing, I don't know if there's ever any way to determine a predisposition to drug addiction or alcoholism. However, that being said, if I had to look back and draw a connection, I would say that, for both my brother and myself, the experimentation phase, before I would say the full-blown grips of addiction kicked in, but the experimentation phase with some drugs and alcohol began right around the same time that both of us got disconnected from group activities and sports. And, you had mentioned it before we started recording here, the concept of isolation. And it's not to say that, my brother or myself didn't have any friends, but once we started to kind of distance away from those friends a little bit, disconnect from some of the sports leagues that our parents had gotten us involved in, that's when I would say, as I get older, some of these sayings that I've heard growing up that I thought were nonsense start to ring true. When you hear something like idle time is the devil's plaything, I would say that to some degree that rings true. And we found ourselves with some extra time on our hands and started to experiment with some different things, namely marijuana and alcohol in the beginning. I can tell you a little bit more about, what addiction looked like and at what point it kicked up from recreational to addiction, if you'd like, however you'd like to proceed.
Bill, I would like to proceed with that. Before we get to that point, I think you've made a very important distinction, and it seems to be somewhat of a common trend that at some point, many who have been addicted to what I'm learning is a disease of drug addiction got its start with some form of isolation. I'm not exactly sure where I fit with a group of friends, if I fit with a group of friends, something of that notion. And then you took on some friends who got you involved in drugs. Is that a somewhat of a characterization of you and possibly your brother?
It is, yeah. And I don't want to falsely claim, victimhood or negate either one of our roles in the process, because I don't, want to make it seem like we were completely innocent bystanders who got led astray. We were both actively involved in this process, but to kind of, in the interest of turning my experience hopefully productive for maybe a family member or a parent of a kid out there, I would say to just be mindful of who your kids are hanging around. If you start to see some differences in their friend group, especially in those very crucial developmental years, early teens, mid-teens, late teens, if you start to see a shift in who they're hanging out with, might be something to look for. Also, if you start to see them kind of isolating or talking about not fitting in, some things to be on the lookout for. But yes, by and large, I would say that my friend group shifted. Again, I was an active participant in that transition happening, and that was seemingly where I wanted things to go. And, I did my best to kind of hide what was going on from my parents. And I think, by and large, it's easy for all of us to see what it is that we want to see in our loved ones in particular. So, but yeah, I would say that your characterization is accurate.
Thank you, Bill. Now, just a little bit more of the backstory, and then we'll get to the present. But you described earlier that you got started somewhat experimentally, and it got you became more involved, and I'm interpreting what you're saying is you went further downhill, so to speak, with drugs. Bill, if that is an accurate characterization, can you describe to our listeners what it was that if hitting rock bottom is an accurate expression, or is there a point in your life you can point to and just say, this is the point at which I said, I cannot continue any longer the way I am. I must change.
Absolutely, yeah. It's difficult to get to that moment without giving a little bit of what led into that moment. So just give me 2 minutes here. So,
please do.
I'll say to bridge the gap from that experimental phase and recreational phase, and I will throw in the caveat that I don't believe that everybody who enters that experimental or recreational phase ends up in full-blown addiction. However, for my brother and myself, that was certainly the case, that we both moved into full-blown addiction. And what that looked like from, the ages of 13, 14, 15 to my early 20s, early to mid-20s, over the years, I moved into harder and harder drugs at increasing frequencies to the point where I would say from, 18 to 24, I used hard drugs every day of my life. And what it looks like is it starts out as a fairly casual thing, once in a while here on a random night or on the weekends. And then little by slow, that life starts to look more and more normal, and these behaviors and this drug use becomes normalized, and it doesn't seem so extreme anymore. So oftentimes, I'm a member of a fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous today, and oftentimes you hear a reference to a list of I would nevers. And, when I was 15, 16, I had a firm list of I would never do that. And slowly but surely, as the behavior continues and gets more normalized, it doesn't seem that outlandish anymore. And you start checking off things off that list of I would nevers. So, what my life looked like from 18 to 24, it went from being just a fun thing to something that I needed. I felt like I needed anyhow in order to feel okay. I had lost any sense of deriving any self-worth or self-esteem, self-confidence, or value from anything within myself. I felt completely disconnected from myself, from any sort of sense of spirituality, from the world around me, from other people. And the only thing that really made me feel any degree of ease and comfort in life again was when I would use drugs. And, for me, that was a sensation that was so powerful and yet so elusive that I would continue to chase after it despite what the consequences that were catching up to me were. And again, to quote something that we say often in AA, I used because of what I felt like it was doing for me in spite of what it was doing to me at the time. So, to kind of speed up here and get to that rock bottom point there, over the course of 18 to 24, I found myself encountering experiences with the law in various forms, a DUI here, a couple charges for simple possession there. And, believe me when I tell you that, I come from a family where it is not okay to get arrested. In my time in recovery, I've been exposed and had interactions, and I have friends that come from families where it's a little bit different and the reins were a little looser, and God bless them, but, that's just not how my life was. It was not okay in my household to get arrested. And I remember the first time that happened, I looked my father in the eyes and I told him, Dad, this will never, ever, ever happen again. And I meant it with every fiber of my being. And that was when I was 18 years old. And over the next 6 years, I probably got arrested another 9 or 10 times. I went to a couple different rehabs and, all throughout just didn't think I had a problem. I really didn't. All I knew is that the only time I felt any degree of, again, ease and comfort and any sense of like everything was going to be okay was when I got this artificial dopamine hit from the drugs that I was using at the time. And, it's a very, very unsustainable way of living. In order to keep up with that, it's a full-time job. So I was doing plenty of things at the time that I was very, in hindsight, I'm very ashamed of. And I knew that my family wouldn't be okay with. But again, it was seemingly the only way I knew of at the time to feel anything like I was going to be okay. And, towards the end, the last couple of years, even that couldn't do it. So I was just living in a very miserable, depressed existence, wondering how I got here. And that rock bottom moment for me was, again, numerous arrests, numerous times through treatment, feeling like I was really at the bottom of the barrel. On one hand, what everybody's seeing from the outside looking in is that Bill's showing up to work every day. Bill's still adhering to his obligations in life. Bill's still going to college and doing, fairly well, convincingly well enough that nobody would on the surface suspect a problem. But something's different about Bill, because no matter what, when he's around, mentally and emotionally, he's not present, and he can't seem to get any real happiness or satisfaction out of anything in life, no matter what he does. And so I'm kind of living these parallel lives where, again, during the daytime, I'm going to college, I'm keeping up with my grades, I'm showing up to work every day, and by night, I'm doing all these things that I'm ashamed of in order to, feed and fuel my drug addiction and try to, maintain this image like everything's okay. Eventually, that balancing act caught up with me, and I lost the battle on that front. I found myself sitting in a jail cell, and I found myself sitting in jail for a couple months in 2012. And, it was definitely the lowest point in my life. It really was, I remember, I'll never forget, I had been in there for a day or two, and I was finally able to call my father. And at this point, I was going through full-blown withdrawal. I'm sweating, throwing up, not to be overly graphic, but I can't control when I go to the bathroom. That whole deal, and I'm just in the worst physical pain of my life. And I get on the phone with my dad, and he says to me something I'll never forget. And he says, Bill, I'll never understand for the life of me. You have people around who love you. You have opportunities in front of you. You have all this light, yet repeatedly you choose to gravitate towards the darkness. Why is that? And I probably said, in response to that, I said the first honest thing I had probably said to my father in years at that point. And I just said, Dad, it's a really good question. I don't know. And I really didn't at the time, hindsight being 20/20, and having some experience now in recovery and having some knowledge about what indeed it was that I was suffering from at the time, I'm able to see. But at the time, I didn't know what I was up against. And I really didn't know. But all I know now, looking back on that, is that I was up against something far more powerful than my own willpower. And once you cross over that line, in AA, we call it the jumping off point. There is a distinction between some recreational use and full-blown addiction or alcoholism. And once we reach that jumping off point where it feels like we can't live with or without drugs or alcohol, we've lost the power of choice. And that's where I was. I had lost the power of choice. The only thing I knew to keep me feeling even remotely connected or any semblance of comfortability within my own skin was to continue getting high and drinking. Again, to do that on such a frequent basis usually requires that, you end up doing some things that are against the law. And then, so therefore I found myself in that jail cell. And I got off the phone with my dad. I went back to my cell, and for the next 2 weeks I continued to go through withdrawal, And I really didn't know when I was going to get out. I really didn't. And, I just felt like my life was over at that point. I had racked up quite a rap sheet on myself at that point in time. And, again, I'm sitting here with, a college degree in one hand, a loving family on the same hand. On the other hand, I have a full-blown drug addiction that I don't know how I'm going to kick. I don't know if it's even possible to live without drugs and alcohol in my mind. And I'm now, soon to be a convicted felon. And for me, I think life is over. There's not going to be any job possibilities for me. There aren't going to be any opportunities for happiness in the future. Really, the whole charade was up, and I really didn't see how life was ever going to be good ever again. So to kind of speed this thing up here, a couple months sitting in that jail cell, again, didn't know when I was going to get out, but what ended up happening was I got into what they called like a pre-trial intervention program. This was done based on an assessment that I got in the jail facility that basically told the court system that indeed this individual has a severe addiction to drugs and alcohol and would probably be well served by going into some sort of a specialized treatment facility. So after a couple months, I remember I got a phone call. I was getting released that day on the condition that I went straight into an inpatient rehabilitation facility. So I did. And basically, I still had a court date to determine my final sentencing months ahead. But, a big portion of how that was going to go was contingent upon how well I did in rehab and how well I did once I got out of rehab. So I left the jail facility. I don't know what day of the week it was, but we'll just say it on a Tuesday. I went straight about an hour car drive down the road to an inpatient rehabilitation facility. For the first time in my life, I was 24 years old at the time, and the first time in my life, I finally just surrendered to the idea that maybe I don't know what the heck I'm doing, because I had tried every single way I could possibly think of to beat this thing. I had tried substituting one drug for another. I had tried hundreds of times to quit entirely and just seemingly couldn't do it. I had tried to switch my friends. I thought I was going to, give up using drugs, but I would still, interact in the lifestyle and be around people who were doing it. None of it worked. And for the first time, again, I kind of went in metaphorically with my hands up in the air, ready to surrender and take some suggestions of people who maybe had been through the same thing as me and came out on the other end. And again, I didn't have much hope at this point in time, but in the course of my inpatient rehab stay, some individuals from the same fellowship that I'm a part of now, AA, they came in and they shared their experience, strength, and hope with me. And, what that looked like was these guys would come in and speak, and they would tell their story, not too far off from what I'm doing right now. And, they looked like they had their stuff together. They looked employed. They were well-dressed. They seemed really happy. But when they spoke, and these were guys who came from different backgrounds than me. Some came from better backgrounds. Some came from worse backgrounds. And some were, different colors than me and looked different than me and whatnot. But they all had the same common story about how they felt on the inside. And they gave me a lot of hope when they discussed how indeed they did recover. And what they told me, and stop me if we're not looking good on time, Ron. But what they told me was a couple key things was start going to meetings, these 12-step meetings, AA, NA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. Start going to meetings, get a sponsor, somebody to kind of walk you through the 12 steps that are involved in this 12-step fellowship. Do the steps and get a commitment and get a home group. So, I started to do all of these things after I got out of treatment. And I got to be honest with you, at first it was all extremely uncomfortable. I kind of felt like a newborn baby again, trying to make new friends. I left all my old friends behind and had to make all new ones. And I had to get my hand up in rooms full of strangers and say, I'm Bill, and I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a drug addict, and this is how I'm feeling. I just got out of rehab, and I don't know what to do. And, sure enough, these people, they started to connect with me and reach out to me and help me in a way that I wasn't able to help myself at the time. And so, for me, what happened was, and I always go back to this saying that, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I firmly believe that. And when somebody's at the end of their rope, and I'll just describe how it felt for me, at the end of my rope, I felt very isolated, alone, and disconnected, both physically from everybody and emotionally from everybody. And so what happens in the beginning of the recovery process is we try to get connected once again. And oftentimes it starts simply by connecting myself to another human being. That's a great start. And then, hopefully several human beings. And from that initial connection point, we start to feel a little bit reconnected with ourselves once again. A little bit of self-worth starts to seep back in. And then we do some other work via the 12 steps that continues to elicit this growth in terms of self-worth and self-esteem and value as a human being again. And these connections grow into more connections back again with the family and friends, and maybe even, ideally, some sense of connectedness to a higher power, whether you want to call it God, spirituality, whatever it might be. But either way, these connection points are important. And when, for me, when I do this work and I stay involved in this fellowship, I feel connected. And when I feel connected, I feel at peace and I feel okay. And when I feel okay, if you remember the term I used a few minutes back, that sense of ease and comfort, I already feel that all the time right now. So I don't need to search for it in a bottle of pills or a bottle of booze or anything like that. I feel that sense of ease and comfort at all times. And oftentimes where I find it, Ron, oddly enough, and this is the last place I ever would have thought to, look for what I was find what I was searching for, but where I most find that sense of ease and comfort is through perpetuating the same cycle that other people put onto me. And I do that by helping still other addicts and alcoholics who need a hand reached out to them and some help getting lifted out of that situation. And so that's why I find myself in my current profession. I work for a drug addiction treatment facility. We do a lot of great work as a company, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So both in my personal and my professional life, I am truly, truly blessed to have the opportunity to help others that are just like me, that just need a hand and just need somebody who understands it, who's been there, to maybe be an example of what is possible and give them a little bit of hope. So I know that's a little bit more than what you asked for, but hopefully that conveys a little bit of my story.
Bill, that's exactly what we wanted to hear. You're sharing from your heart. I can sense that the exuberance, the fulfillment. I can sense the smile on your face as you were explaining what you just did is a radical difference from the way things were 15 years ago. You mentioned also an overpowering force. Here's what I'm discerning from what you said, Bill, and then we'll turn this, we'll start working on today forward on your recovery. But an overpowering force, from what I discerned, you described, you felt a very low self-worth, low self-esteem, low self-confidence. That seemed to be the overpowering force to which you became associated with those of like values who did drugs, but then on the positive side, the connection, relationships. You could start to transition from what used to be in the past to what now can be a new future. And in spite of being from a very functional. Some addicts come from an extremely dysfunctional family. You were from a very functional family, but again, though, what appears to be that overpowering force was your low self-esteem, self-confidence, and so forth, but you overcame that. Is that an accurate summation of what you were saying?
It is, yes.
That's great, Bill. Now, take us to today and forward. That you are, is it fair to say, Bill, that you are recovering? Let me just ask you quickly, is a drug addict ever totally recovered such that you can do anything you want, you'll never go back to drugs?
Well, I have a mixed answer to your question. So I do consider myself someone who has recovered, past tense, from drug addiction. That isn't to say that I'm not still recovering. And I don't think that there is ever a point that you can assure that someone will not go back to drinking and drug use. I live by the principles that were instilled in me in AA, and you know, I always tell a lot of the guys that I'm sponsoring, I tell them this all the time, that, you know, my own thinking and my best thinking got me to the point I just described to you a couple minutes back. Not a good place. Everything that I have today of value to share with anybody who's looking to recover are things that were shared to me from someone else or from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says about this particular issue is that we have a daily reprieve from drug addiction and alcoholism contingent upon our maintenance of fit spiritual condition. So what does that mean? What that means is, on a daily basis, if I'm practicing the 12 steps in my life, if I am staying connected to others, to a higher power that I choose to call God today, I am guaranteed a daily reprieve from going back to drugs and alcohol, because that is me maintaining my fit spiritual condition. With that said, you know, I feel like I can do anything. You know, I choose I choose not to be around any drugs or alcohol, but, you know, in my daily life, family events and sometimes even, you know, professional settings, I find myself around alcohol time to time, and I don't feel any allure or draw back to it. Again, that is contingent upon me maintaining my fit spiritual condition. And so long as I continue to, you know, to practice these principles in my daily life, and, you know, what does that look like in a practical sense? What it looks like is, you know, a little bit of prayer each day, meditation, reaching out to others, checking in on them and seeing how they're doing. If there's a new guy who needs a sponsor, me having my hand ready to reach out to him and be willing to help him. You know, constant thought of others ahead of myself, that on a practical level, day to day, is exactly how I maintain my fit spiritual condition.
That's great, Bill. Now, I'm going to also process what you're saying as the Bill of the past lived a disciplined life, albeit it was pretty much a negative discipline that took him down. The transformation that Bill has gone through now has a discipline, but it's all on the positive side. Everything you're just saying, scriptural values, principles, and my guess is, Bill, you have chosen to surround yourself with people of like values, those who are uplifting, or we sometimes, Marty and I use the term up-leveling your circle of friends. Is that a characteristic of who you are, the new Bill?
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. I mean, I would say I have a balance, right? And not that I'm any, you know, better or worse than anybody else, but, you know, I would say that's definitely accurate. I keep individuals around that I aspire to be like, at least in some respects. You know, I keep a circle of friends who are absolutely walking the same path as me. I probably talk to, on average, 20 plus people in recovery every single day of my life. And then again, not that I'm any better than anyone, But I also routinely keep myself around a couple guys who maybe, aren't quite there yet, but they would like to be, so I can help bridge that gap for them and bring them up with us. So, that's absolutely fair to say. And when it comes to, individuals who are self-destructive or negative, or just, put people down or bring others down, listen, I am full of self-confidence and self-esteem today. And what that affords me, amongst many things, is the power of choice and who I hang out with. And certainly I do not choose to surround myself with anybody but individuals who are going to be positive and overall increase, my experience and the level to which I enjoy this ride of life,
And Bill, one of the things that has been characteristic throughout your description is that you are accountable for every decision you make and you are making. I can picture your dad on the phone talking to you, and he was probably brokenhearted that, son, this is not the way I raised you, but I still have hope for you. My guess is, Bill, your dad never gave up on you, that your dad, through his heart, was hoping that, Bill, I hope you hurry up and get through this so that we can return to life, or turn to life, father-son, the way he had envisioned it.
I would say that that's 100% accurate, and I've been very fortunate and very blessed that way, because you mentioned it, I mentioned it earlier. Not everybody's so fortunate to have, to come from a family that offers that level of support and unconditional love, unfortunately. But I, so happen to have been very blessed. And, what my life looks like today with my father is, nothing short of amazing. I make sure to call him several times a week. I visit him every chance I get. And, we sometimes will, even in today's COVID climate, we'll play online chess against one another a couple times a month. It seems to be an activity that he really likes. So, I would say that my relationship with my dad has gone from not just, one of father-son, but, one of two friends as well. And I'm very fortunate for that, and I'm grateful that he never gave up on me, because I don't know if I'd be here if it weren't for, the love that I've gotten from him and my mom as well.
Sure. Bill, I'm going to ask you to try to project if there is someone that is not yet indulged in drugs, but follows what appears to be a profile, and I'm not labeling or profiling anybody, but let's just say that this person, by our estimation, has a low self-esteem, low confidence. In talking with this person, they pretty clearly indicate they are uncertain if they have any place in life, that kind of thing. What I'm leading up to, Bill, is that can we, on the outside, identify what may be some leading indicators of people such that maybe we can intervene at the appropriate time? And I'm not advocating that getting in someone's face and shouting, don't you ever do this kind of thing, or even that person who is engaged in drugs just shouting literally or figuratively, you must stop. Bill, based on your experience, how can we effectively intervene, be connected with someone who either has the propensity to indulge in drugs, or maybe they are in drugs? We want to do the best we can to help them out. How can you help us who are on the outside with that?
Sure. So it's a great question, and I definitely appreciate that. I would say that, one of the best ways is just, we talked about addiction being, a lack of connection. And I would say that any way that we can intervene to foster a sense of connection, whether that be offering, unconditional love and support, a comfortable environment wherein which, this child or this teenager or this adult feels comfortable talking and connecting with another human being, that is a great way. And I'll, speak specifically for kids at the moment. I think a lot of this, a good percentage of addiction happens and starts to, really take place in those teenage years. That's where some of those behavior patterns are formed. And I think it starts oftentimes with what would be pretty typical, some, teenage anxiety, some social anxiety, some uncomfortability, not really being sure exactly where one fits in. But, through encouragement to activities that make somebody feel connected, even if it goes against the grain, even if everybody at school is playing football and you like basketball, or you really like painting, or you really like this genre of music when everybody else likes this one. There is nothing wrong with individual interests and tastes and expressions. In fact, it's what makes this whole palette of life so beautiful. So the more we can, make somebody feel comfortable with expressing themselves and knowing that they'll have a welcome audience and a compassionate ear and somebody who will listen and not judge, and anything we can do on that front to foster that sense of connection, I think is nothing but a good thing. Can we stop it in every case? I don't think so. I really don't. I wish I could say yes, but I don't know that, if somebody really is going to go that path and they have their heart set on it for whatever reason, sometimes I think human aid is insufficient. But that being said, to answer your question, anything we can do to foster and facilitate a sense of connection, through human-to-human interaction, unconditional love, and support of any healthy activities or interest that somebody shows, I think, is a great place to start.
That's great, Bill. Now, do I understand correctly, Bill, you are employed with Recovery Centers of America?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
For those of us on the outside who have a passion to help those either recover from or hopefully even avoid using drugs, are there programs that maybe we outsiders could participate in just for the sake of learning and to know better how to be more informed, how to effectively connect with those who might be, if I can use the word, suffering from, or let's say do have a low self-image, low self-confidence, and so forth?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, I'll say that Recovery Centers of America puts on a program designed to do exactly what you're describing. It's called Seeds to Recovery, and it's a virtual meeting that takes place once a month on I believe it's the third Saturday of every month. So it's coming up in the weekend after this month, and I'll actually be participating in it. And what we do there is we take a couple hours where, we'll have somebody from our clinical team get on and describe some of the more clinical aspects of what's going on during the addiction versus the recovery phases in the brain, and what does that look like, and what are those emotions, what do those signs look like, stuff like that. We'll also have somebody maybe get on from a medical standpoint and speak a little bit to that. And then we'll have one or two individuals, like myself, who have gone through it firsthand, or somebody, who maybe had a family member struggle with addiction. And, oftentimes these are individuals who have lived through it firsthand, either themselves or with a loved one. And, they can give their perspectives on both sides of the fence, what it was like, kind of before, during, and after, going through this experience, and things that they might have done differently. So the whole idea is to educate, inform, connect, and give loved ones or concerned community members some hope and some real answers. So that would be one. In addition, I'll just throw it out there that there are chapters of what are known as Al-Anon and Nar-Anon in basically every community across the country. So in addition to Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, these are two 12-step fellowships designed for drug addicts and alcoholics by drug addicts and alcoholics. Al-Anon and Nar-Anon are kind of like their family or community counterparts. So they're not really for the individuals that are going through the addiction or trying to recover themselves, but they're for the individual that you just described, the mom, the dad, the husband, the concerned neighbor who wants to do something to take a stand against the scourge of addiction in the community. And it's a place where, again, first and foremost, and I think really we're all looking for it, not just individuals suffering from addiction. I think everybody wants to feel connected, and especially for the mom who's got a kid who's strung out on drugs, and she doesn't want to exactly broadcast it to the neighbors that this is what, little Billy's going through. It's a place where those individuals can go and connect with other individuals going through the same thing, with the same fears and the same heartache and the same concerns, the same questions, to start to get some answers on exactly what they can do to help and do their part in this issue.
Bill, you are very articulate. I will tell you that the exuberance in your voice, the persona that you are projecting right now, I just have reason to believe is a picture transformation of what the previous Bill used to be. I can tell you, Bill, that and I, to a degree, I wish I would have known you 15, 18 years ago, just so that I could personally testify to the transformation that I feel you definitely have made. But I can project that in your persona, which is very positive, and your work at Recovery Centers of America, I'm sure, is very inspirational to those there. But I feel very certain in telling you that those of us that are listening and the others in the listening audience will be inspired, are inspired by your transformation, your persona, your level of confidence that I'm sure is still growing, but is just seeming universes ahead of where you used to be.
Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate you saying that. On one hand, I would have liked for you to have seen the before and after picture too, but on another hand, let's both be grateful that you didn't see that old version of me,
No, and I can project myself as your dad. That, yes, there were some disappointing times, but our focus is today and forward. Everything positive you have to offer. And, Bill, this is what I'm learning is an amazing transformation. And Marty and I are faith-based. We give credit to God, our Lord and Savior, that He has worked such a powerful work in your life. And just for those listening, know that anyone engaged in drugs can recover and become a Bill Koroncai. And those that have not yet started, maybe have a low self-confidence, can as well learn to develop a healthy self-confidence. So, Bill, thank you so much for sharing from the heart. This is very, very inspirational.
Thank you so much, Ron. I appreciate that. I've been very, very blessed. And I just want to close with this and say that my case is not unique. There are thousands, in fact, millions across the country of others just like me. And I know, if you watch the news or you hear the stories, oftentimes we hear more of the bad than the good going on out there in the world. But I just want to, rest assured that my case of recovery, I am not unique. There are thousands others just like me getting started on their road to recovery every single day. So if I can do it, I promise you anybody out there can do it. And again, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate the platform and a chance to hopefully help at least, one other individual who might be going through something similar to what I went through. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Bill. And I just choose to believe that those of us on the outside, as we learn more and know how to effectively connect and interact, we're going to have a very positive impact on those who may otherwise not make as good a choice as some others.
I agree, and I think it's great what you guys are doing. It's awesome.
All right. Thank you, Bill. We hope to interact with you further.
Likewise. Thanks, Ron.
Okay. What is your take of Bill's story and how we might effectively work with those who are addicted to that drug disease? Very curious to know your thoughts about those of us on the outside. Perhaps you have a son, daughter, family member, close associate, anyone within your circle of influence who has the propensity to engage in drugs, but they have not yet. One purpose of this podcast series is to help identify those who have the propensity to engage in drugs, but have not yet. Can we help them make a good decision? Can we develop a very genuine, effective relationship with those people to where we can help them avoid what Bill has gone through? I think Bill would probably say that the Recovery Centers of America are doing great work to help those who are addicted to drugs overcome and get rehabilitated to a healthy lifestyle. And I appreciate everything that Bill and those in the Recovery Centers of America are doing. Let me suggest to you, based on my experience with the Recovery Centers of America, should you have anyone, friend, close associate who is drug addicted, to consider Recovery Centers of America in their ability to help those over the disease of drug addiction. It can be all-consuming, as Bill said, and once the drug-addicted person has made the decision to stop the drug addiction, they can, with the help of some very supportive people, overcome what has been, with them, as they look back on their life of drug addiction, just a devastating life. And so my heart goes out to those people. But if we have the opportunity, the ability to recognize some of the leading indicators that might be a propensity for people to engage in drugs, then I'm very interested in knowing your thoughts of what those leading indicators are and how we might work together to help those who have the propensity to engage in drugs to make the decision not to do so. As I make that statement, I have no desire to label anyone, and as with Bill, he had a loving family and relationships with those who are drug addicted such that they know we are on the other side waiting for them once they've made the decision to recover, I think is very important. We need to learn how we can effectively interrelate with and develop those relationships to where these people, the drug addicted people, have the confidence that we are there for them when they make the decision to overcome. We're there on the other side. Let me know your thoughts. Ron at thecooperculture.com, and let me know your thoughts. I'm very interested in what you think, how we may help reach out to those who need our help. It's becoming very obvious to me that we need to show that we care, and we need to do that in a very genuine, effective way. Very interested in learning your thoughts and continuing the dialogue. We look forward to chatting with you.